Welcome back. It's a great pleasure to announce here JW, Jan Willem, from Vlambeer, who's, we talked about game feel. He said that was a terrible term, so we almost got into a fight about it. So I said, well, you want to talk about whatever that is that we can't call game feel? And he said, yeah, I will. So you're going to destroy the term, and I said, that's okay. But he's going to at least talk about how to make the games feel good. And a warm applause for Jan Willem from Vlambeer.
Hello. Right, let's do this. So, I'm Willem Nijman. I'm 50% of indie studio Vlambeer. And I am responsible for game design and execution, whatever that means. And this talk is about game feel, with a lot of those things. I don't know how you call those in English. This is our logo. It's a flaming bear. And we made a lot of video games. This is a video game called Ridiculous Fishing, which you'll hear more about tonight. And I'm not talking about the awards because that would be silly. And this is a game called Super Crate Box, which you can download for free, also on Steam. This is a game called Gun Gods, which you can also download for free. It's like a first-person shooter about gangster rap on Venus. But nobody played it, but it's actually not that bad. This is like a really badly cropped screenshot of an upcoming game called Luftrausers about airplanes shooting each other. Yeah, pretty much. And this is a game we're working on right now called Nuclear Throne, which is like a post-apocalyptic roguelike about mutants growing new limbs and shooting monsters and all that kind of stuff. All right. So let me start with this. I don't have that much to say about game feel. I'm not an academic. I'm more of a person who comes up with things and then makes them. Talking is kind of hard. You know, I like tweeting. That's easier, shorter. So I'm not going to go too much into theory here. I'm not a psychologist. I don't understand all that stuff. But I have made a lot of games, and I found out some small little tricks through that. Let's start by getting some water. All right. So there are some people who have great things to say about this subject. Actually, there's Martin Jonasson and Patrick Perot, who are actually giving a talk here today. And they're right there, and I didn't know they were giving it, so I'm basically doing the same thing. So if you want to not be spoiled, you should walk away right now, because their talk is probably better. And Cactus, or Jonathan Söderström, gave a great talk at IGS in 2009 about how making games is like making babies, but it also had some really good tips on making games feel good. That stupid word, feel. Like, it's a super abstract thing, and it's different for every player, but you still have to work with it. So, I present to you a video game. But this really sucks. Like, this is just a computer with some shit on it and nothing's happening. You know, games aren't really games unless you have something else, which makes it a lot more complicated suddenly, which is called a player. And the worst thing about players is that there's so many of them and they're all different, and that makes making games very complicated. Like, a game will be different for every single person playing them. Once again, I don't understand these things. Actually, I'm just saying what I think makes sense, and it probably doesn't make sense, but it works for us. So let me explain how games work, and it's very complicated. So you have this game and a player, and then the game goes into the player's head through, like, basically visuals and sound. Don't have smell games yet. And then the player's like, oh yeah, I see these things, let me push some buttons, and then the player puts his input back into the game. And then the game's like, all right, I am going to change for you. Like, see, it actually changes. Bam! And the changes go back into the player, and then the player's like, ooh, this has me thinking, and now the game has meaning. And that's actually where the value comes in. Like, people can change their lives, learn something, become a better person because they pressed those buttons and the game said, hey, this changed. And that's why games are interesting, at least to me. And this is probably all wrong, but once again, that doesn't matter because it works for us. And then those thoughts go back through the player into the game, and the meaning becomes gameplay and all that stuff. But this is cooler. So with Vlambeer, we're basically good at just one thing with making games, and that's like this part, which is after the game goes into the player and then the player puts input into the game goes back into the player. That's like I press a button and a bullet flies and the bullet hits something. That's that blue arrow there. And we make that feel good, and that's why they asked us to give a talk about game feel. I also put an extra slide in here so I can like animate this, so it's kind of more exciting. So this whole model is kind of interesting because you can put many games into those arrows and kind of figure out which parts they focus on. Like you have some games that cover lots of meaningful subjects, and they're all about that little green arrow going into those thoughts. And you have AAA games who only do like the first thing and pour that game into a player, and player doesn't really do much. That makes me sad. All right, enough talking about game feel. How do you call those things? Like the hyphens or quotation marks? Cool, lots of quotation marks. So I'm just going to scratch that name, and then I think on the menu of the conference, not the menu, how do you call that thing? Whatever, the schedule, this talk is called The Art of Screenshake, which is also a bit silly. So I'm just going to cut all the talking crap and just teach you guys some tricks I learned while making games. So this talk is now officially called 30 Tiny Tricks That Will Make Your Action Game Better. Which is something I can actually talk about. Because I might not be an academic or a psychologist, I make action games. And I'm proud of it. Let's go. So, we have here a super shitty platform shooter. Like, average stuff, anybody could make this crap. I'm sorry. But seriously, anybody could sit down with some tutorials and get some shooting in there, and you know, you have a game. Cactus, in his IGS talk in 2009, which I talked about a couple of minutes ago, showed this with like a Mario clone, and it's like, oh, you have to jump on their heads many times before you die. And it was really funny, so I just stole it. So basically, this game really sucks because, you know, not much is really happening. I have to fill an hour, so it's fine. Oh, I killed one. Yay! So, the end. Thank you. No, I'm kidding. So now I'm just going to put those 30 tiny tricks in there to make this game better. So the first one is, basic animations and sound. Like, whee! I made those sounds in SFXR, which everybody uses. I can now jump and my hair moves. Like, that's me. I'm actually wearing that sweater today. And I can like shoot more and woo, walking animation. So now the game, like the sound just makes the shooting feel much better. That stuff is super important. Alright, so let's start fixing that shitty gameplay with enemies with too much health. So, lower enemy HP. Kinda. Yay. Now, like this is such a silly, tiny change, but if I would have shown you the first game instead of this one, you would have totally thought it was a shitty game. But this is not that bad. Like, this is starting to get somewhere. Everybody can kind of figure this out. Like, enemy HP, make it lower. It's more fun. And then also make your rate of fire higher, because it's even more fun, because it's a fucking video game about shooting things. You might as well put a lot of shooting in there, because it's my only way to communicate with this sad world. And now that we have this, you might as well put more enemies in there, because you get to shoot more things, and it's basically the same as having one enemy with a lot of health. I'm just putting 6 in there with a little bit of health. It just, like, those tiny differences might not mean much for gameplay. Actually, they do, but you can pretend they don't, like numbers-wise. But it feels better. Like, let's do that again. Yeah, get some. See, now I'm like, this game feels better, I think. Alright, bigger bullets. That's also important. See, like, that's like a beginner mistake in video games. People make these tiny dots for bullets because in real life a bullet is tiny. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, bullets in video games should be at least like the size of your chest or something. But this is still kind of weird, you know? So let's make them like add a little muzzle flash. This is like the cheap trick we always use in Vlambeer games. It's just the first frame of your bullet sprite. Just make it a circle. Hey, muzzle flash. That's what all the first-person shooters have. And faster bullets, because that just feels way better, right? So now we're talking. Like, this is not a really shitty game anymore. It has big bullets that move fast and a little muzzle flash. I don't know, what did I put in after this? Less accuracy, because it looks more fun. And it actually influences gameplay a little bit. Like, but that I don't know. I just felt at this point while programming the presentation that this was a good thing to add. And it makes it less boring to watch at. And this is pretty much all there is to watch at with this game. It's all about shooting, you know. It's a mindless, stupid game. So make it look different every single time. And impact effects. Like, see that little thing playing when I hit a wall or an enemy? That makes, like, bullets stop disappearing. It's like, hey, something hit here. And it's all, like, not a lot of work. You can all add this in no time, at least I can. And a little animation when enemies get hit. Because, like, that red arrow going back into the player's head, that I showed earlier, that's all, like, feedback. Like, you communicate the changes the player put into the game. And, you know, now I see, hey, this enemy is getting damaged. And it's just like a white flash and a slightly different pose. And I think their faces disappear, which is kind of weird. What's next? Enemy knockback. Oh, that's another one of those things that actually can, like, nobody really notices it, but it can kind of influence gameplay even. Like, you see how that guy actually fell to the right. Now I have a dynamic combat situation, like they're flanking me. And basically all I did was move them back a couple of pixels when they get hit. Because, like, that's what happens when you get shot in real life too. Permanence. This is something super important. Like, why leave the fucking battle empty after it's over? Like, now I'm here saying, hey, look, I killed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dudes. There was combat here. And, like, if I return here later from this great corridor of level design, I can see, oh, I already went to this place. I have to go back. Or whatever. That's something that's super important to us. Like, to put some kind of sense of previous combat in our games, like, not just leave it empty. And computers are super good nowadays, right? You could just put 1 million corpses in there and your computer would be like, oh, they don't have to disappear. Like, that stuff is fine nowadays. And let me just move all the way back to Nuclear Throne. Like, you see 2 maggots down there that are still alive, but most of it is just rubble and dead things. And it doesn't do anything to the game, but it just shows you, yeah, you're basically a guy made out of muscles and you shoot things. And that's also why in movies shootouts in bars are so good, because every bullet that misses actually hits a bottle. That kind of stuff is important. Like, all the props in Nuclear Throne in this game, they have like cacti and stuff standing in it. They're just there not to influence anything, but when you miss a shot, something actually happens. Now I have to move all the way back to where we were. But that sense of permanence is really important. Camera lerp. Like, a lerp is something that I think it means linear interpolation. Yeah, I got it right. So now the camera just slightly lags behind the player and kind of smooths in. I don't know if you even noticed, but it feels better to move around, like this stuff and this stuff. Like, that's the thing about game feel. Those are the little details that you don't really notice, but you feel it. Ooh. But this camera still sucks. Like, camera work is important. The game is not here to show you the player, because this game is not about the player. This game is about shooting things. And you're shooting things in front of you, so we might as well do this and like move the camera around a bit and show you what's happening a bit more. Tiny thing, but it's important. Like, this camera works so much better than this little thing. And it's just 2 steps in my presentation. Yeah, in Luftrausers, a game that's coming out sometime in 2017, like, the camera is super dynamic, and it doesn't only follow the player, it also like moves slightly ahead where you're aiming. When you're nearing the water, the camera kind of moves down and says, hey, there's water here. And all the bullets are kind of put into this big ball of mathematics, and it calculates like the center point of all the bullets, and the camera slightly shifts there. So when you're flying, you don't really see that stuff, but it's like, hey, is the camera slightly moving this way? Oh, I better dodge. And you dodge, and then a bullet flies from off screen and you don't die, and it feels super good. And it's like, just spend a lot of time on that stuff. It's really important. So what's next? Screenshake. So this is something that kind of became a thing Vlambeer is known for or something, but that's just because it's like, when someone shows you a game and they ask how to improve it, usually the answer is, hey, add some screenshake, because nobody does it and it's super easy and it makes your game better. Like, see how it's shaking just a little bit? This guy feels good, like he's just shooting and stuff's happening. Like, this guy is sad, this guy is happy. And especially when you shoot stuff, like, yeah, yeah. See, game feel, that's what we're talking about. Player knockback as well, that's also one of those things. Now it's also a gameplay mechanic, like I don't have to walk. I could play the game just shooting, which means more use out of my primary way to interact with the world. But also, when moving forwards, I'm moving slower when I'm shooting, so maybe I should stop shooting. If you put a button in a game, like a firing button, give someone a reason to not press it, even if it's something tiny like this knockback. Otherwise, you might as well remove the firing button and just have a game that automatically fires always. Yeah, and you get dangerous situations like this with a bit of lava, and I'm like, oh no, I have to fire a bullet, no. And I can float in midair. And then I die. That's cool. Sleep. So this is this little command which basically pauses the game for a couple of milliseconds. You could just code it yourself. I use GameMaker and it's called Sleep. I don't know anything about programming really. But what it does, it just pauses the game for a couple of milliseconds, and I use that in moments of impact. So when I hit an enemy, it will pause for 20 milliseconds or something, and your brain won't notice that, but kind of use that time to process what's happening a bit more. So all the moments that I want to have impact, your brain is like, oh yeah, I remember that more because it took longer, but you don't notice. And I don't understand how brains work, but I don't know, that's my theory. So nobody really notices it, but like I put some tiny sleeps in there when you hit a enemy, and also when they die. And the difference between this and this is like tiny, but it like you can feel that stuff, and that's why I uploaded that presentation, even though nobody here is playing it right now. I don't know why. Probably because you don't have. Oh, good, one person. But like when you're playing it, 2 persons. Yes, very good. When you three people, awesome. Good people. When you're playing it like that, you actually feel the difference, and that's kind of what feel is about. You can't, like, this is really stupid. Why is everybody watching this? Why isn't everybody standing behind my computer pressing buttons? Like, that would be way better. Next year we'll have 200 keyboards here for everybody under your chair. Gun delay. This is just kind of a bug that looked cool. Like, my gun is now lagging behind me, so I put it in the game. Looked like he's carrying it. Whee! And now the gun also kicks back, like boom, boom. feels more powerful, like it's a tiny little detail, and it makes your game better. Strafing. I just, at this point while I was coding this presentation, I was like, hey, it feels kind of cool if I can just kind of walk backwards while shooting, and then if I flip, it changes that way. And that's also a reason to not press the firing button, which is good, even if it's just like half a second, so I can turn around. But that's strategy. More permanence. Oh yeah, I put little shells in, and they stay forever, because computers nowadays can handle shells that stay forever. They don't have to disappear. After all, I could just do this all day. Just cover the floor. And then later, when I'm walking back here from defeating some boss or something, like, oh yeah, I shot a lot of bullets there, that was fun. And I can actually count how many bullets I shot to check if the achievements were correct or whatever. If you're Petri, you could also add like physics to the shells and they pile up. That would be cool. And you can like swim in the shells. Someone make that game, please. Petri? Because now there's not much use just standing here. They just end up in the same spots, or whatever. More bass in the sound effect. So this is a funny little story. I was talking to a guy who is like senior designer at BioWare now, but he used to work at Raven Software. Vlambeer here, he's super cool. And he told me that one time while I was working on some first-person shooter, they had a gun and it wasn't very popular. And the investors were like, oh man, that gun sucks, you should go and fix it. Like, the gameplay is bad. And he went to his computer, he opened Audacity or something, opened the gunshot sound effect and clicked like bass boost, 12 decibels, and put it back in the game. And he's like, all right, I fixed the gameplay. Handed the computer to the investors and they were like, oh yeah, that feels good. And that stuff is still in that video game. I think it was like the Wolfenstein reboot, not the recent one, but the one before that. And it's like one of the most popular guns in that game. Like, add more bass to your sound effects. It's easy, and listen to that, and listen to this. Who wants to play this? Raise your hands. See? Who wants to play this? Like a couple of people, see? Oh, and then you can make your machine gun shoot like this. Because it's a video game and that's easy to program once you have those bullets and the accuracy thing. I forgot to make the gun shoot like 3 shells. So just imagine it's like a special type of ammo with 3 things or something. But like this makes video games better. In Nuclear Throne, the first weapon is a pistol. The second weapon we programmed was a triple machine gun. Just because we had a bullet and we could do that, you know? If you're making an action game, you might as well make a proper action game. Random explosions. I don't know, this doesn't have much to do with game feel, but I figured I could add like a 33% chance all the enemies exploded on death. See, and that stuff feels good. Even if it makes no sense. Oh, now we have faster enemies as well, because I think the gameplay was getting a bit easier because of the random explosions. So now they're faster, and it feels like more action. Like, if you see this stuff, this is like a proper action game happening here. Right? That looks like something that's kind of promising. Yeah! Look at that gun kick. Like, that stuff's good, right? It's just like 3 pixels. And the art is really bad, but it works. More enemies. Because they're faster, but we have random explosions and we might as well make it look even more like an action game. Yeah, get some. I'm just gonna do this all day and stop talking now. Alright. Oh, even higher rate of fire because now we have more enemies and we might as well like... Because you can, and it's easy, you just change the value. So that camera kick is something I wanted to add separately, but I forgot about it, so I added it in this step of the game, so I didn't have to change all the code. What are you doing? So I just have to do this. Yeah. So that camera kick is a little trick I figured out while making Luftrausers. Instead of just having a random shake, it also moves the camera back a little bit. Like if you look to the right, you can see this. Oh, that's also my kickback though. But basically, it just moves the camera in the opposite direction of the direction I'm shooting in. That stuff also feels good, and it's like a little cheat you can use in your games. After this talk, Vlambeer is out of business because everybody knows all our secrets. So all of our games are cancelled. I don't know, Rami's probably not here, so he won't get angry at me. Oh yeah, this is the most important game design lesson I've had. Back in 2005 or something, or 4, I wanted to make a shoot 'em up, and I asked Cactus again, Jonathan Soderstrom, like one of the guys who made Hotline Miami, which is a game that's super good at that permanent stuff, by the way. Like, you kill a lot of people, you walk to the next floor, and you kill a lot of more people, and then you walk all the way back through this sea of corpses, and they actually use that in a meaningful way as well. It gets you thinking, so they involve like the whole feel part of the cycle with the thinking cycle, which is super clever. Anyway, I asked him, how do you make good arcade games? And he told me make really big explosions. And I've been working by that lesson ever since. And look at this. Like, see, now the explosions are better because they're bigger. I don't know why I started out with this small explosion, but look at this. And the explosions are just like a circle that flashes from black to white. And it works, I think. So that's game feel. Even more permanence. I think here I added like simple smoke to the explosions so that after a battle you can kind of see the smoke fade away and it's like, yeah. And you could take this to an extreme level. Like, this is just scratching the surface. Like, you could add gibs and heads flying everywhere and whatever you want. Like, but just work on that stuff. But there's one thing missing from this game, which is like gameplay. Because I can interact with the world, but the world does not really interact with me. Like, they're just kind of getting shot. It's horrible. Almost feel sorry for them. So what this game needs is meaning. Like, whenever you're making a game, make sure that there's like the things that you want to happen are in there. Don't play it as your game. It's like, yeah, if you hit an enemy, just press restart. That stuff sucks. Like, don't do that. Program that game over state. Add some meaning to your game, which is what I'm doing right now, which is like step number 40 in making and it's true, I was shooting all these things that just wanted to like kind of chill and walk around. Like, I wanted that to be more dramatic though. Like, let me just try and kill most of them first. Because now I have something to fight for. And there's this last guy, he was meant to kill me, like, and then I could do this and say like, oh, I just paused it, but did you see how I just like put the frame rate at 10 frames per second because you won't notice on a shitty beamer and it looks like I programmed slow motion. Just do things like that. And then it speeds up again when I hit the floor and it says, you were the monster all along. It should say that. Yeah, and that's basically how you make your game feel better. Let's compare this to this. I can't even strafe. Like, what kind of shitty game is that? And there's no meaning. I want to do this. Like, this is what video games should be like. They should have meaning and triple machine guns, at least action games. And this guy could be there to put a message out to the masses. And that's pretty much all I have to say on game feel. Like, just fill your games with love and tiny details. And are there any applauses or questions? I don't know.
Thank you, Jan Willem. That's great. Anybody from the room? Questions? Yeah, Charlotte?
Hello. I want to know what's your view on balancing the game? Like how many enemies, how many ammo, how long the level takes?
Yeah, about balancing your game, like how many enemies, how much ammo. That totally depends on your game. Like with Super Crate Box, we tried making a game that didn't even need ammo, so we put boxes everywhere that change your weapon, and that's the only way to progress through the game. So that game was automatically balanced, and we didn't have to balance the weapons because you had to pick them up anyway, and they're all super unbalanced. I don't know, like it really depends on your game, and you have to kind of trust your initial gut feeling and then stop playing your game yourself because you're the worst playtester in the world because you just are too close to your game, and there are way more other people than there are yous. So just get those other people and have them play your game and work with that. Just keep iterating. That's my answer, I guess. Because
that's an important point. Because I guess what you're saying is, when is it too much? Like you started with something that wasn't enough, and you've added stuff and added stuff and added stuff.
So when is it enough?
And when is it too much?
Too much. Yeah. Actually, we had to put like an option in Nuclear Throne to disable the screen shake because some people were getting really nauseous.
Okay.
And I guess like a warning with screen shake is that it gets kind of addictive and you get used to it and you put a ton of it in your games and you stop noticing it, and then everybody else throws up when they play it.
Yeah. And then you do a playtest?
And then you do a playtest and you're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And then
you keep it.
And you don't listen to anybody anybody says.
You should totally like don't put things in your game that hurt people physically. Yeah. Other than that, just keep adding it until you're out of money.
Yeah, but how much? Like you just said something really important. Where after a while, you're the one who designed it, so you don't really see things as well as people who haven't played it yet.
Yeah.
What happens? How do you? I mean, I know you in our building, and you invite people in your office and have them play. Has anything fun? I mean, does that have a fundamental impact on the game? The way
like
your games
I was at
change?
Brendan Chung's talk before this, and he was saying like you're super close to your game, especially with a small team, and it's super hard to look at it objectively.
Yeah.
So you get other people for that, and when you're playing your game, I'm just copying his words now. Like I copied Petri and Martin's talk. Yeah. It's really easy, and he was saying that. Oh, I forgot what he said, actually. He was saying that when you're playing your own game, you're kind of subconsciously avoiding bugs and like, oh, yeah, there's a problem here, but I'm going to ignore it. And yeah, this game is a lot of fun. And when someone else plays it, it might turn out they have no clue how things work or they totally break your game and it's not fun for them. So that's that weird thing about games where, like, how does this work? Where, like, you have this thing and it doesn't mean anything and you need this person before it starts being something, and there are, I don't know, like how many people are there on this planet? Like a lot.
Yeah.
And there's only one of you, so you have to make the game for them, I guess. Like make the game you want to make it for fun for you, but test it on them.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I asked you to do this is because I noticed when you were making Lufttrousers, you were spending a lot of time getting the actual last minute, like how fast does it go left, right, up, down. It has this really, it feels very easy. It's not as easy as it feels, but it feels great to steer the plane. And you spend a lot of time on that. How much time did you spend on that compared to like the rest of the process, like setting up the game?
Well, like there's two sides to that. Like with Lufttrousers, we set out to make it a game that feels great to play for everybody. Like, I give you the computer and you launch and you start blowing up things and you feel like, oh yeah, I'm the coolest fighter pilot in the world. And that was the goal with that game. But you're a really bad player and your score sucks. But it still feels really good for you.
Yeah, that worked for me really well.
Yeah.
My score sucked, but I felt like I was really good.
That's fine.
Whereas with Super Great Box, we had a fight about, I said, it's way too hard, it's way too hard. And you were like, no, it's supposed to be this way.
Yeah. Like there's a difference between hard and short games, but that's a whole other story.
Okay.
The thing... Well, how much time we spent on that stuff?
How much time compared to the setting the game up?
We make our games in a couple of days, and then we spend a year polishing them.
Yeah.
And we have those basics in there. If you look at our very first prototype of Luftrausers, it's pretty much the same game, and it just lacks a menu. And then we spend a year making a menu, because that's no fun at all. Like, I want to make those effects. That's pretty much how it works. And during that year, you have to make that stupid menu. You spend a lot of time tweaking the rest, and it just keeps changing, and you try to make it feel as good as it can for you. Like in a way, I guess the Vlambeer games feel really good to us mainly. Like it's kind of my idea of what feels good, like triple machine guns and shooting lots of things that flash when you hit them and randomly explode. And that's not for everybody, but at least it makes our game super unique, and that's, I guess, what you call that Vlambeer feel or whatever.
Yeah. Do you think the platform has a lot of impact on this? Like if you change from a PC-controlled game to, say, the Vita or something?
The way of input matters. Like this guy's using a gamepad, and that changes that purple arrow. Yeah. And the purple arrow influence, I don't know. But it feels different. But I don't know, other than that...
Because you guys have had other companies build versions for you, or other people.
And sometimes it doesn't really work out. Like it doesn't feel as good as the original prototype. Like the original Radical Fishing was made in Game Maker, and then Rami ported it to Flash, and I still secretly think that the Game Maker version is better.
Okay. So there's real subtle things.
That's Rami messing up. So.
Oh, that's Rami. Yeah, of course. Anybody else? Questions about this? Yeah, go ahead. Haptic feedback.
Actually, I have never used that, and I kind of wanna. I think in Luftrausers someone else did that. But yeah, that stuff is super cool, but I haven't really worked with it, which is super weird. Yeah, but I kind of want to make a computer with a screen that physically shakes. Like, that would be cool.
Okay, well.
We can do a playtest with that. I can shake the screen for you.
If you do that, we'll invite you back to explain about that again. Yeah. Anybody? Yeah?
Yes, I heard the screen shaking was a bug. Is that true?
Like what?
Bug in Game Maker. And a friend of my teacher told me he worked with you, and that the screen shaking was a bug, but you keep it in.
I don't know about that.
Oh, okay.
I've always like. There's this weird thing in super low resolution games where making a camera follow something smoothly is really hard, so it kind of looks like it's shaking, but that's something we don't really want. Like all this kind of... See, the background color actually changes. But this kind of shake, that's all like hand-coded and intentional. And it wasn't like an accident. I don't know who invented screen shake, but I also would like to say that probably every game would benefit from having screen shake. Even if you're like, oh, my puzzle game doesn't need screen shake, you're wrong.
And explosions, of course, right? Right here? Yeah?
Do you actually market games using the screen shake? Is this very prominent in everything you do, and do you put it forward when you release something, or is it something you let players find out and have them just get the game because of the gameplay?
Well, the thing with these things is if you just put them in the game and you put the game out, people will be like, yeah, this game is fun and it feels good, but they don't know why, and they don't really care about it. Like, if it's not there, they say, hey, this game sucks. If it's there, they just play and they're happy. And I guess what we do at Vlambeer, what makes our games kind of different... I also added like a little cloud when you jump, by the way. But what makes our games kind of different to a lot of other studios is that we put a lot of time into these things. So we kind of have to tell people that, hey, look at that, it feels good. That's the Vlambeer thing, yeah, marketing. And Screenshake is like a super simple example of that, because I just spent like 30 minutes just showing tiny little things that I keep adding, and no player without seeing this presentation is going to understand that or feel it, or, well, they feel it but don't think about it. And Screenshake is like the most basic example. That's like the one great thing that's the great thing of these things. I don't know. I don't know how to say words. But Screenshake is like an easy example of how to make games feel good.
Great, yeah. Anybody else? No? Anything about Vlambeer or about the studio's next big secret project X? Or
oh, that's a good one.
Yeah? No? No news? Are you already working on something?
Actually, we're having like super big news tonight, but I don't think I'm allowed to talk about that.
I see. So
keep your phones near or something.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Jan Willem, thank you so much. A warm applause for this presentation. And just one practical question. How did you manage to skip between slides that you actually play? Is this GameMaker running right now?
Yeah, I programmed this whole presentation from scratch.
All right, very nice.
You want to try it?
Yes, I would love to.
Let me put some meaning in here. Here.
Okay.
This is easy mode.
I'm going to start the...
Just press this button, that's all you need to do.
Okay, hang on. All right.
Do you want me to hold the microphone and you can tell them about your feelings?
Oh, how I feel. I can see you're getting back at me. Oh, this is before he can die, right? So that's kind of nice.
If you press D, you get meaning.
D is meaning.
Yeah.
Okay. That means that if I don't... Oh my gosh.
How do you feel about this?
That's very meaningful. Thank you.
How do you feel about shooting those enemies before when they couldn't even hurt you?
Well, it feels more balanced now.
But don't you feel like guilt for killing them?
Yeah, how do you restart?
You can press S.
S.
To reload the slide.
Okay.
So this whole presentation is available. Okay. You were asking for
Can we go a few slides back before you implemented that?
Press A.
A.
That goes back. So you can download this whole presentation online and shoot things as well.
Awesome.
It feels good, right?
Yeah, it does feel very good.
So if you press D again, then you go to like the original version. How do you feel now?
It's very lame.
Are you having fun? Do you see promise in this prototype?
Yes.
Would you like to fund it with the Dutch Game Garden?
Oh, absolutely. I would put all my money into this.
Cool.
Yeah. And what is it with zombies?
They're not zombies.
Oh, okay.
Why do you think they're zombies? Are you dodging my questions?
I'm not very good at multitasking, but
you can't die, so.
Oh, that's right. I don't have to be afraid of these guys.
But why do you think they're zombies?
Well, maybe that's kind of a cliche, but I guess they're more like a skeletal guy, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Little skulls.
Maybe they're just wearing masks and they're like trick or treat.
Did you actually have
shooting them?
Did you actually have Paul make special graphics for this?
I made all the graphics.
Oh, you did? Awesome. Wow.
That's my secret skill. I can animate hair.
Is that your hair?
Yeah, I need a haircut.
Okay.
But yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you very much.